Therwan Saranai. Good evening and welcome to another Dhamma session organized by Dhamma Center Colchester in the UK. And this session is organized as a part of Vesak celebrations. The topic of today's Dhamma talk is overcoming obstructions, which can have a significant impact on our day-to-day life. The talk is delivered by Venerable Hokandara Pannavamsa Thero, the founder of the Dhamma Center, Colchester. And as Dhamma Dana, this talk is organized and sponsored by Mrs. Noeline Leelasena and her family in London. This family, this Leelasena family, they are close friends and devotees of the Dhamma Center. And also, Noeline is a member of the Dhamma group, our Kalyana Mitra group. Upon the request of this Leelasena family, this talk was organized as a sharing of Dhamma to bless Bhante Pannavamsa for his birthday, which falls on the 26th of May, that is in 3 days' time. It's on Wednesday, on the Vesak day. And Bhante, they would like to wish you happiness and good health throughout the year. And our blessings are with you, Bhante. And with Metta, I invite you to deliver the talk.
Thank you, Anoma. Let's start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Okay, so thank you very much, Anoma. Thank you, Noeline, also sort of for initiating this talk as a Dhammadan and also to bless me, which is kind of ironic because I'm doing the talk myself. But, you know, I mean, anything for Dhamma. So here goes. So I thought, because we talk a lot about Dhamma, because we talk a lot about the attainment of Nibbana, we talk a lot about the attainment into high states of mind. That has been the focus of the Dhamma Center, to promote this sort of elevated sense of living in sort of reaching these high states of mind. Catering to, of course, people who are engaged with their careers, people who are parents, people who are, you know, sort of everyone really, because Dhamma is for everyone. But when we speak about enlightenment, when we speak about Nibbana, there are no sort of loopholes, because we could lie to anyone else, but we can't lie to ourselves. But sadly enough, it does mention within the Dhamma that we actually can lie to ourselves. And the frailty of that pattern of thought is the fact that we do believe that. We can sort of elucidate a truth to ourselves that we completely and entirely do believe and live and abide by through the journey of life. So that is what the focus of today's talk is going to be. Overcoming, understanding those states and how those states lead to whatever insecurities that we experience in our life, be it a layperson, a member of a spiritual circle, be it a person who is spiritual or not. Any person who is living a human experience will undergo these things that we are about to sort of elucidate upon, and how we then cultivate a practice to overcome those obstructions that we entirely set on our own accord. That is going to be what the focus of this talk is going to be. Sorry. All right. The Buddha speaks about the data, the elements of the world that we perceive through the five senses. In the process of perceiving, perception plays a predominant role. We know that. I mean, perceiving, perception, it's the same thing, right? When we speak about perception, whatever that we do actually see through the five senses, hear, smell, taste, or feel through the five senses, the Buddha speaks about these elements being taken in three ways by a person who does not have a developed mind. What are the three ways? These are the three types of illusions, namely in Pali, Sanya Vipallasa, which is the illusion of Sanya, perception, Chitta Vipallasa, the illusion of consciousness, and Ditti Vipallasa, the illusion of views. In taking in, now what is Sanya Vipallasa? Sanya, or rather maybe I should start with what is Vipallasa or illusion. An illusion is when an element is cognized entirely in a different, opposite manner to what it truly is. Sort of like, for example, a very gross example would be, the sun is out, but you perceive it as being the moon, right? Something completely, entirely different. The Dhammic ethic gives the example of perceiving something which is impermanent as something which is permanent, something which is impermanent as something which is permanent, something which is impure as something which is pure, something which is ill as something which is good, and something which does not have a soul, Atma, as something that truly has a soul. In these four ways, it is said a person wrongly perceives elements that we draw in through the five senses. This is wholly done by a person who lives a life without a sense of awareness or sati. Because now that is vipallasa, perceiving something in a nature completely opposite to its true nature, right? I hope that is understood. Sanya vipallasa is then it applies to these four that we've just mentioned with regards to the perception, the perceival of elements. It applies to the second, the chitta, the consciousness that you have, where you perceive it or understand the consciousness to be entirely different. We are not speaking about the law or nature of the consciousness. We are talking about what the conscious is, even at a gross stage. Meaning, if it is you perceive a bad consciousness, a wrong consciousness, an unwholesome consciousness as something which is right, which is something which is all right? In that manner, that is the standard that we are speaking of, in order that it applies to everyone who has come here today. And then ditti, views. The illusion of perception relating to whatever views, thinking that these views are correct. For example, some might believe being a racist is okay. Some might believe being a misogynist is all right. Some might believe in those wrong patterns of thought, they might think that this is okay, that this is all right, that you have had life experience to think that these erroneous views are right in your own way. These all fall into the caliber of, or the category of vipallasa, illusion, right? Illusion. When a person lives by these illusions, then arises something known as manyana. Manyana is fantasy. It's fictitious, but it's not just fantasy and fictitious. It is egotistically supported in a way that you think that what you have is higher, better, much more robust in nature to what might be around you. So we assume that this, for example, even the fact of maybe even with regard to the practice, we assume that this practice is better than anything else around. If a person without true understanding over the practice says something of that sort, it completely falls under the category of manyana, which is this fictitious fantasy, which is absolutely egotistical, right? Absolutely egotistical. But this is not the main point of the talk, right? We have more to uncover, right? So as we go along, now manyana arises. Now there are three types of manyana. What are the three types of manyana, or these sort of fictitious sort of views? It is tanha manyana, right? The friction of greed. We have mana manyana, this fictitious conceit. And then we have ditti manyana, this sort of fictitious views that we cling on to from an egotistical manner. From an egotistical manner. When these arise, now what is the first? Let's see how these arise. Tanha manyana. Tanha manyana, or this fictitious sort of view of over tanha, is the application and attraction towards an element as mine, as something which belongs to you, something which you perceive your existence to be connected with, right? To be connected with. So, for example, if you would take this body, right? This perceivable of my within the body would be classed as tanha manyana. Then we have mana manyana. Mana manyana is when we would attach or cling on to something as mine, right? Now, for example, if I am to cling on to this jar, that I have recycled as my water jar, as mine, now I'm considering this to be above and beyond anything that anyone else has. Anything above the standard or whatnot of, through comparison, I sort of push it up in a conceited manner where I now assume or start believing in the fact that this is superior, right? That this is superior. This happens in connection to the first manyana that arises, or the first fictitious view that arises. Then we have ditti manyana. Ditti manyana, or this fictitious attachment to these views, is my way or the highway, right? My framework, my ethic, my, I think we get the point. There's no need to rub it in, right? It is the attachment to this framework that we think is right, just, and thinking that everyone needs to sort of fit into this, or else that these people might be, for example, to put it in a crude way, a waste of space, right? Or not dignified, or not worthy of respect, right? In a way that we then egotistically would see them lower than us, or even above us, right? Now, how does this apply to our daily life? When we usually speak on these dhammic objects, we usually see them in a way, or through the context of leading to anicca dukkha anatma, impermanent, suffering, and non-self, right? And through the five aggregates of clinging, which is the mind and the body. But let me connect it in this way today, so that we are inclusive of the different people who are gathered here today. a manyana, or these fictitious attachments that we often develop supported by ego, clings on to both good, good by the standard of the mundane world, good meaning dignified, respectable, right? And it also clings on to sadness, suffering, trauma, and everything on that accord, right? So I'm drawing your attention a bit away from the five aggregates of clinging, which is, of course, that the senior Dhamma followers will know, right? And also Noeline has now joined that group, so Noeline will also know. So Noeline, you can explain to your family later on, right? But any sort of trauma, sadness, suffering that we go through in our life, that we see and experience as we live this journey of life, will also be clung onto in a way through these manyana. Example. Now, Sri Lankans, we are used to our sort of Sri Lankan parenting is illegal in the Western world. Actually, it's yes, you can go to jail for Sri Lankan parenting skills, right? In this part of the world, right? But in Sri Lanka, we consider it quite robust and healthy, right? In Asian culture, not only Sri Lankan, but in Asian culture. You step out of line and you will get a slap on your face. It is simple as that. We don't need to explain it any further. Now, when a child, right, take an example of a child, the child perceives, now this is something that if you born and raised in Sri Lanka, you will go through this, right? This is the way that you are disciplined. A child take this in a way and compares this and says, my gosh, I was abused, right? Yes, of course, it can be abuse. It can be parents do sometimes take it, out of order. Of course, it does. But even if it is not abuse, sometimes because of the clinging attribute of our mind, we cling on to that part, and we often ruin the whole relationship that we might have with our parents in the future. Why? I got slapped once. Do you understand my point? In that way, we would often cling to certain experiences that we might have had and make it a factor determining the relationship that we would have with, for example, in this case scenario, with our parents for the rest of our lives. But in reality, one bad thing happened, but there were a million good things that happened as well. However, the clinging attribute clung on to the one bad thing and made that the whole entirety of the relationship that you're having now 30 years after, you're still having this in your mind, right? This suits the definition of complex PTSD in psychiatry, where a complex PTSD, actually complex PTSD was discovered in 1994, which is the year that I was born, right? So I thought it might be quite rather fitting to bring it into topic as well, because 1994. So complex PTSDs are rather different. Complex PTSDs are rather different from PTSD, because complex PTSD, stress disorder, is or operates or is rises with experiences such as what we would have. It is not through war or anything of that sort. It is with experiences like this parent children relationships, with relationships that we have with our friends and all of these things. This person with complex PTSD can be sort of sorted out in, there's 12 sort of defining factors in complex PTSD, where, for example, one part of complex PTSD is, for the young people, a person likes you, or for example, you will like a person as long as the person doesn't pursue you. Right? You will go behind a person, you will woo a person, but as soon as the person says, oh my gosh, I think I like you run a mile. That is one of the factors within the 12 of the complex PTSD, right? And there are many more. Some people don't like to be touched. Some people are very touchy. They are very short tempered. All of these are signs. And I think we all know someone, or we ourselves might be a person who might sort of have these sort of experiences. And I'm sure we have these sort of feelings in a certain way. This is a sign that you have some sort of complex PTSD. Of course, I'm not diagnosing you, go to a psychiatrist, I'm not diagnosing you. I'm just speaking the facts of a book, right? A complex PTSD arises with relation to this egotistical attachment that we develop through experience. That experience curtails the human experiences that we might be able to have with friends and family, leading on to sort of building a family in the future ourselves as well. This whole entirety would then, we can connect it to this manyana that we have now spoken about. This attachment in an egotistical manner to greed, or through greed, conceit, and ditthi. These, the vipallasa lead into manyana, the illusions lead into this fantasy, is supported by the five hindrances. The five hindrances. The five hindrances, the clinging to the sensual pleasure, kama chanda, vyapada, ill will or anger, thinamidda, thinamidda is sloth and torpor, kamachanda, vyapada, restlessness, and skeptical doubt, right? These five, it has a way, now these five has a way of creating or making a person weaker. How those five hindrances brings about a person now becoming weaker in mind is through four universal consciousnesses that apply to all unwholesome actions. What are the four? The four are delusion, moha. I'm going to explain how this happens. Delusion, moha. Shamelessness, ahirika. Fearlessness of wrong, anuttappa. And restlessness, uddhacha. Right? The Abhidhamma students should know this. Right? The four universal consciousness, the types of, I'm sorry, these are not consciousnesses, these are mental factors. These mental factors, which are again delusion, shamelessness, fearlessness of wrong, and uddhacha, are also noted as the four bad friends. The four bad friends. Why they are known as the four bad friends is because friends are people who are always around you, right? Friends can sort of help you to cultivate and develop yourself. They can also work to your torment and for your destruction. Friends are always around you and they influence everything that we might do in our lives. When these four are there, for example, delusion. Delusion is the inability to see reality. This is not the fact of you not wanting to see. This is the fact that you can't see. Right? It's two different things. Because if you do not want to see, it is the fact that you know. Delusion, you do not know. It is like a thick fog in front of you where you can't see a foot away. It is blinding in a way because you are almost overwhelmed by a certain thing that we cannot see what is right before our eyes. For example, through the ages, through the decades, I might be the youngest person in this Zoom meeting. You have seen a lot of death around you. You have seen people growing old. You have seen your own children grow old, have children. The natures of impermanence are very apparent to us who are able to actually see. Now, through COVID 19, this experience of old age, decay, illness, death has been magnified to a level that where it is almost stressful to now see. We knew that there was illness in the world, but now we struggle with the fact of coping with it to a far more greater degree. But it was the same thing. We've been having this since the beginning of humanity itself. It is amplified because everywhere we turn, our life is now governed by almost the death toll of the country. The death toll rises, we go into lockdown. The death toll comes down, we come out of lockdown. It is almost the focus that we have to have now upon this death toll that we see has amplified the fact of reality being shoved in our face, which is quite difficult to handle. Which is quite difficult to handle. Delusion. Delusion makes things which are apparent not apparent. Shamelessness. Shamelessness and fearlessness of wrong, just as if you sort of walk into a puddle of mud, the mud, depending on how or what kind of mud it is, sometimes the mud is quite slippery. The delusion makes you walk into the mud. Ahirika and anuttappa, this aspect of shamelessness and wrong, the fearlessness of wrong makes you now skid in the mud and fall into the mud. Now, so rolling in the mud. Why? You sink even more deeper into this mud to a level where now it is very difficult for you to come out of it. It further reinforces your unwholesome mentality to a level where now you start losing strength or stability to stand stably on the ground. It reinforces unwholesome states in the mind that you start dipping even more further into those delusion-based thoughts that would arise in the mind. For example, when we are so overtaken by the lust of, maybe let's take uh, earning, right? You know, it's not like we earn. Yes, we earn to put food on the table, but not everyone earns to put food on the table, right? We earn for ego. We earn, you know, I was in this Zoom sort of webinar with, you know, everyone was 500 million pounds plus, right, their net worth. One guy had donated 60 million to the Tate Modern Gallery. And, you know, they were all high flying investment bankers, all of these people. And the topic was charity and sort of philanthropy. It was organized by the London Philanthropy Club. And something that the guy who was quite charitable, I forget his name, but this guy who had donated 60 million pounds to the art gallery, something that he said is, you know, people or philanthropists often would not want to give to charitable causes because the more that they give, they are unable to reach the Forbes 500 list or the richest list. It's not about food on the table any longer. It's about maintaining a stature, maintaining a figure where you are able to get onto a certain list, where you are able to sort of have your name up there. But in reality, what happens after you have to leave all of this behind? What happens when it comes to a day where, yes, you can afford the best hospitals in the world, but the best doctors can't revive your dying body? What happens when the only person who is with you are your two very highly bred dogs, because the dogs can't barely speak and you can feed them, so they are with you for that purpose, and everyone else is just there for the money? What happens when you are such an unwholesome person to be around, because you have been egotistically flaunting your ego everywhere, while people are only around you for the fact that you are wealthy and you can destroy their lives if you wanted to? What happens? What is that life? The fact that we allow something which, such as capitalism, to take over and delude our life to such an extent where we lose the true values of what life is, or what life should be enjoyed as: the relationships, the kindness, the ability to connect with another person, having a true companion, having people around you who are not there for the money, but who are there for actually the value and the fact that they do actually love you. Those aspects are lost when we often sort of pull the wool over our eyes, because maybe that's the only thing that we know how to do. This is not a conversation about success, because success is defined by different means. This is a conversation about true happiness and the ability to die peacefully. And a person who often has a lot to lose dies very unhappily, because they have a lot to lose. And death is that ultimate slayer between you and everything that you have materialistically sort of cultivated and developed. There was this story in Burma, actually. You know, there was a sort of mystical sort of thing in Burma where, you know, there are these monks who've attained enlightenment and their bodies don't decompose, right? And one night, one of these bodies disappeared. So all around the country, through the media, right, there was this rumor which sort of arose, like, you know, that couple months before that, where, you know, someone came out, sort of a soothsayer came out with the fact, if you eat this, that you will have immortality, right? If you eat this sort of dead body of the arahant, you will have immortality, right? And the body goes missing in a month. And I was there in Burma at the time, and I remember everyone was saying, "Oh, the generals took it. The generals must be eating it right now." Of course, not proven, right? But everyone thought it was the generals who took it, you know, because it was the generals who could literally just take it, and I mean, they can do anything in the country. But when you have a lot to lose, and when that is the only thing that you truly have, you would do anything, because we have that sense of attachment to that. Then we have restlessness, the last of the four. Restlessness is the inability to any decision that you try to make to come out of a certain thing. Restlessness removes the confidence that you have in your life to take that decision, to enact the volition that you had in mind. It completely derails you in a way that you now cannot achieve or come to a position where now you are able to take a course of action for the better. So people often who struggle, you know, they know the Dhamma to a certain extent, they have a lot of values with regards to, you know, they really value the Dhamma, but the life that they live might be often, you know, sort of like a rat race. And they find it quite difficult to sort of come into a state of mind where they can really tell themselves, okay, I'm going to start meditating, I'm going to start practicing. They want to do it, but they never come around to do it. Why? This sense of restlessness working in the mind. And this applies not only to meditation. These four apply to every thing that could bring about development in your life, even in your careers. Meaning taking the risk that you should be taking, that sort of thought which says, oh, maybe you can't do it, maybe, maybe you'll fail. That thought that arises in the mind which sort of implies that you're probably heading for something which is bad, a bad outcome, which always points a red flag or a white flag even to you. But really, if the risk was taken, this might have brought about something which was good for the person who was to do it. These four types of bad friends, delusion, shamelessness, fearlessness of wrong, and restlessness, which arises in the mind, the longer it works in the mind, it makes the being who bears this weaker and weaker. To an extent where now this person is unable to truly develop something which is wholesome within their lives, to keep to a certain practice which would allow them to develop a higher sense of consciousness. In the study of secular mindfulness, scientists often refer to beings who are unable to, or beings who, or people who are practitioners, who have practiced meditation, who are able to now, before they act, where they are actually able to think, is seen as a supernormal ability. It's called a superpower by scientists themselves, because mundane beings are programmed not to be so. We are programmed to always sort of see a situation in the way that we see it, not in its true bigger picture. So when this happens, or when scientists would say that people who meditate, having the ability to take a step back and to see the bigger picture, to observe the true realities of that present moment of experience that you are having, this is something which then is literally the key to coming out of the unwholesome states of mind that we often develop. Even with meditation, as we go into states, we cling on to different aspects of the practice. We might cling on to the time that we meditate. We might cling on to the pleasure that we have through a concentrative mind. We might cling on to states where we don't feel the body any longer. We might cling on to positions where we are able to observe the breath or any other element of meditation for a prolonged amount of time. We cling on to these aspects. Why? That is the thing that we know best to do. We cling. We cling so much because that is what we think is the way to maintain ourselves. Like the Buddha gives an example of an empty vessel always thinks about filling it, not realizing that the empty vessel, because there is no sense of literally the bottom being, there being no bottom, that the more that you fill, it's not getting filled. It's just leaking out. It's just exiting through the bottom. When a mind is focused upon something which is unwholesome, think about it in this way. The Buddha says, there is no fire that I see in the world as a fire of lust. There is no fire that I see in the world as a fire of hate. Why? Because what is the aspect of a fire? A fire burns. That's what a fire does. It's only uh, it's only attributed to how hot the fire is. From a small tiny matchstick to a volcano, it burns. Whatever you try to feed your lust, it burns, it burns, it burns. So what do you have to do in life then? If this fire is what you think life is, then you keep on feeding it. You keep on feeding it. Hatred. Nahi verena cha verani sammantija kudatana. Hatred is never pleased by hatred. People assume that revenge would often bring them this sense of satisfaction. It might to a certain extent, but it never takes away the trauma. The trauma that you might have experienced, for example, women who are raped, a person who had to experience a knife being pulled out at him. They might take revenge on these people. These people might go to prison, but you have forever changed after that experience. They might go to prison for what they have done, the violation that they have done. However, the trauma that you experience is still there. So, where is this going to be appeased? These bad friends that we've spoken about contribute to that fire. Contribute to that fire because why? Just imagine a man, or even a better example is an animal, an elephant, a horse who's sort of gone into a big puddle of mud. He can't get up. The more that he tries to sort of struggle and come out of the puddle, what happens is he skids and fall back in. Sometimes horses and elephants, they die in the mud itself. Unwholesome states is like feeding something into a fire consistently throughout your life. Throughout your life. That sort of bottomless sort of vase that you try to sort of contain, a vessel that you try to fill up. Because why? It will never be filled up because it consumes everything in a ravenous way that you will never feel a sense of fulfillment. Maybe as mothers, you might sometimes assume, I hear sometimes mothers always sort of repeating to themselves or repeating to, Mangsa, Agniyan. So, when sometimes mothers call us, they often have to repeat to themselves, I have done enough. I have done enough. Almost as if they expect me to say, yes, you have done enough. Trying to get it out of your mouth. To prove to ourselves in a certain way, yes, you have done enough. It is not your fault. They are adults now. Their mistakes that they are making is not because of you. They want to hear this, so of course I entertain and I tell them this because this is the truth. Of course, this is the truth. However, you shouldn't need a monk to be telling you this or any other person to be telling you this, because you are the person who knows how much you have done. You are the person, but still we have that little doubt, isn't it? That sense of doubt. Could I have done better? That sense of, why did I have to do that then? We all have that sense of doubt. Even sometimes you imagine, oh, I should have like worked hard in school. I was such an idiot. I should have taken my mother's advice and sort of, done this degree instead of my art degree. you know, we all have that sense of doubt with regards to the decisions that we made. That doubt is because of these bad friends. Destabilizing you, creating that sense of restlessness, imagining that you could have done better. This doesn't change anything. However, we naturally ponder over this sort of intrinsic contemplative thought, which leads nowhere. This is created by these unwholesome states of mind. So, what does the Buddha say? What does the Buddha say? Sabba papassa akaranang kusalassa upasampada sachitta pariyodapanang etam buddhanusasanam. Moving away from that which is bad practicing that which is good, starting from the little things, starting from the little things, and allowing the wholesome mind to now slowly take the throne of your mind. The wholesome mind does not mean that you become a person who is complacent, a person who is a yes sayer. Those people are not wholesome people, they are weak people. There's a difference. People with wholesome states of mind have wisdom within them. That is what fuels the wholesome attributes. People who say yes, yes, yes are not people who are living in wholesome. These are people who are weak. Even when we now create this sense of wholesome, the mind is sort of pushed up. The Pali word is ulluppatumam, which is to say that you are hoisted to a higher platform. Hoisted, why? Now you have so much of wholesome confidence to say, yes, I can do this. It is no longer supported by unwholesome. Let me give you an example of what a confidence supported by unwholesome looks like, or sounds like rather. Now you might see your boss, or your line manager, or whoever it is that you work under, might be a confident fellow, right? The confidence that arises due to the fear of losing is unwholesome. The confidence that arises because of your intrinsic abilities is wholesome. Do you understand? We often exhume with the fear of loss, for the fear of embarrassment. We do things, we push ourselves to stay up at night, to do things, to push ourselves to achieve things. But this, yes, you might achieve it, good. However, how does this reflect on your mind? How does this reflect on achieving a higher state of mind? Confidence should be not because you are afraid of losing the race, but because you are completely comfortable in the aspects of skills that you truly have, where you are not a person who makes excuses for the bad things in your life, but takes the bull by his horns and make it do what you want it to do, taking control of the situation. That is what the Buddha did, isn't it? The Buddha did not like, he tried all the meditative techniques of the time. He studied under the best of the best spiritual practitioners of his age. He was not an easy person to please. The Buddha was an absolute perfectionist. Because if he was a yes sayer, he would have said yes and remained under those teachers, whilst knowing in his heart of hearts, no, this is not what I'm looking for. He was a person who truly took the bull by his horns and said, no, this is what I am looking for, and I am here to take it. The Buddha, to be able to say, the Pali word which is used is arati virya. Arati virya. Arati virya is radical effort. The ability to determine to achieve something and to be completely focused on it to an extent where you are in no way sort of denounced from what you want to achieve as a goal. The Buddha assumed, and he was the epitome of that confidence. Not in a bloated up sense because fear of losing and embarrassment, but because he was confident of the fact of what he wanted. And what he wanted was to find an exit from this cycle of rebirth and death conducive to impermanent suffering and non-self. As Buddhists, we cannot assume to walk in the path of the Buddha whilst not having developed these strong qualities of mind. Starting from the little things, we have to be able to work towards the bigger thing, the little things. In now being able to cultivate that which is good, letting go of that which is bad, in order that we now bring about an enlightening frame of mind to be the epitome of that bliss that we see within the books that we so respect and look up to, without which we are unable. Because look, the Buddha's doctrine was so special to such a high regard, where it trembled the Brahmins and the Hindus of the time to such an extent where they were absolutely mortified by seeing the following that the Buddha had. It is said that at one occasion, there was a city which was surrounded by 7 large kingdoms. The Buddha taught at this city, this smaller city, which was surrounded by these 7 large kingdoms. And all the people from the kingdom came to listen to the sermon. And it is said that all the people, the husbands, the wives, the children, all of them ordained. That was the sway that the Buddha had upon the lives of people, because what he was saying was so true. Through COVID-19, that is what has become more and more apparent. The fact of we assume that we are stable in our life, but something goes wrong. A virus, an organism, a particle in the air, or in what you call for something that you touch, can completely derail the world. Not a society, but the whole entire world. We have seen so much of death. Sri Lanka at the moment, there are so many, as to the course of this talk, 1 hour speech, there might have been more than 100 people who might have died in Sri Lanka right now. They're not even giving the figures out. Look at how fragile this life is. We are with our families. We are enjoying ourselves. Tomorrow we get a call from a doctor after screening that you've had. They've found a cancer in your somewhere, a tumor somewhere. Now the happiness of the whole family is turned upside down. We assume that this happiness that is going to this happiness that we might have right now is going to last, but that is what the Buddha said. It's not. At one point or the other, there is going to come about something that is going to derail you from that happiness. So looking forward, it is not about looking forward to the bad that is happening, but it is in having the sense of awakeness to be able to know and not be deluded by the fact that our lives are going to be forever perfect and happy. Life is a struggle. So what do? Prepare. Prepare through wholesome practices of the mind, developing that which is wholesome in the mind, allowing you to now live happily, even through adversity, to be able to live through and face these adversities of life that we cannot turn our eyes away from, and be able to face reality with a sense of mindfulness, awareness, calm, tranquility, to be able to still be able to live happily with ourselves, our families, our loved ones, and maybe even go the extra mile to be able to attain Nibbana. The Buddha says, this is not the first time that we do this, or we have done this. We have run this rat race so many times. We have been sort of going through the cycles of rebirth and death so many times, uncountable times. The Buddha gives us a simile where he says the tears that we might have cried, the tears that we have cried for the departed, for people that we have lost, loved ones that we have lost. If we are to collect these tears, it amounts to great amounts of tears than the volume of water in the four great oceans. This is the amount of suffering that we have gone through in our lives. Right now, if we are to truly see the amount of suffering that is experienced in the world, it is almost as powerful to bring about tears to anyone's eyes. We do not live in a perfect world, and our assumption to think that the happiness that we have or the stability that we presume that we have is actually fragile and it will crumble easily. That is why we work hard. That is why, up until today, 2600 years after the demise of the Buddha, still there are young men and women who leave all their fortunes and heritages and caste and all of that and try to practice and follow the path of the Buddha by donning the robes. This is the reason why 2600 years after the demise of the Buddha, people still make offerings in the memory of the Buddha in respect to that deeply moving doctrine that is everything which is true in the world. That is why we make an effort each and every single day to better ourselves, to cultivate our mind to higher standards, because we know that this mind is insecure. Why? Because we are governed by more unwholesome than what is wholesome. This is why we do all of this. This is why we make this effort. It is not because we are incapable of doing anything else. We are very much capable of doing a lot of things. However, it is not in doing that we achieve success and fulfillment of life. It is in the fact of finding true inner peace. We assume that when we find ourselves in relationships, in love affairs, in marriages, we have a standard of the way that we choose or want to be loved. You want your partner to be romantic. You want your partner to do things for you in ways that you've seen maybe in Hindi movies. However, if we do not love ourselves, if we do not care for ourselves, there are no, the amount of roses in the world is not enough to make you happy. The amount of chocolate from the foothills of the Swiss Alps is not delicious enough to quench your hunger that exists within the deep bellows of your soul. That is the purpose that we do this, so that we can live in a way that is fulfilling not only to ourselves, but fulfilling within the lives of the people that we live with as well. We might assume that we are very, very small creatures in this sort of whole entirety of the world. It is said that we are like nodes in a large network of beings, and we are a very, very tiny node. One node, one mundane person, normal person leading a normal life, comes to interact and develop relationships with 1000 people within average people, 1000 people on average during their lifetimes. Monks, people like monks, associate more than that. Those 1000 people themselves have another 1000 people that they on average keep relationships with, friendships, love affairs, relationships, work mates, all of them. The ability to have this sense of compassion within us, to have a sense of dignity, to live with respect, to have a sense of wholesome living in our lives, attributes and affects all of those 1000 people that we live, work, and come to interact with through our life. Those 1000 people now affected by the compassion that we have showed them shows and enacts in that compassion for other people. Hence, we now belong to a cycle, a network of up to 100,000 beings within this lifetime that we live. This is no small thing. What we might assume that what we do, the goodness that we exhume, is very, very little compared to the whole world. However, If we are all, there are 44 people in this world, in this meeting. If we make a determination to exhume this sense of compassion, mindful living, compassionate based living in our lives, the amount of people that we could affect in a wholesome way is beyond comparison to anything else. And this is our task, this is our duty. So, this wholesome state of mind, it's not only about you, it's about all of us. It is about the world that we live in. It is about the children that our children will give birth to and the children that our grandchildren will give birth to. It is the world that we leave behind. So, you have a decision to make. Are you going to be weak, or are you going to take the bull by his horns and tell yourself, no, I'm going to do this right? So, that is the end of the talk. Thank you very much. Anoma, I'm handing over the baton to you. Now, before I go, Noeline, thank you so much for organizing this talk, asking me to sort of, organize this talk for the devotees. She just wanted to share, do a Dhammadhana to bless me. I feel privileged, and I really do mean privileged, to be able to teach Dhamma to such, and especially I'm very, very proud of my sort of inner Dhamma group. We have come a long way since all our Dhamma study and all of that started. And I think something that I often do is on my birthday, something that I often do is, of course, give danas and all of that. This time, of course, we are doing a retreat. But something that I often do is, if I'm not doing any of that, I spend the whole day sort of remembering people who have helped me or even showed a sense of compassion or care to me since the start of my life. So from everyone, and I do remember, and some of you, I'm not going to relate stories, some of you have stuck with me through the darkest times that I have experienced. And some might assume, why is Bhante so favorable to these people? It is because these people have stuck with me in my darkest of times. And this is not something that I will forget. And it is because, Rumi always says, how many times should we forgive a person? And, and he says one more time. And I think the power of a second chance, and the second chance that is brought about by trust and belief that people keep on you, can take you or give a person potential to go a long distance and a long way. So whilst I thank Noeline and the whole family and share all the blessings with all of you who are gathered, together with the family, I see all of you there. I would also like to thank all the other devotees and Dhamma friends and Dhamma family that we have built, cultivated, and developed, and also know that I have everything that you have done for me in my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bhante. It's been so nice of you, Bhante. And thank you very much for the wonderful talk that you gave on explaining obstructions and how to overcome, Bhante. Thank you very much. And that deep Dhamma, Bhante, explaining the deep Dhamma in a very simple way, Bhante, so that it touches our hearts and our minds. And I think that's a talent, that's a gift, that you're gifted with that, isn't that? With the talent, Bhante. So, and this wonderful day, Bhante, this is a wonderful day, I think. And it is, this day has given all of us, that Dhamma family, our group, our Kalyana Mitra group, to pay homage to our dearest Bhante, Venerable Pannavamsa Thero, for his birthday, which is, as I said, on the 26th of May, on the Vesak Day. And Bhante, we are also very privileged and fortunate to have a profound teacher like you, Bhante. And also, I must say that we are eternally grateful to you for your patience, Bhante, having patience with us and your generosity, and also the dedication.
A strong suit, Anoma.
Bhante. You have had a lot of patience with us and your dedication and also determination to teach us and guide us and drive us through the path of Dhamma, path of real Dhamma, Bhante. And also, I must say, I must mention this, at such a young age, Bhante, you have been a wonderful teacher to everyone, to all ages, Bhante. The kids, the young ones, the youth, the middle age, and also the senior citizens like us, Bhante. So, so Bhante, thank you so much for the valuable service you render to the community in general. And we all wish you good health, happiness, and strength. And all our blessings are with you, Bhante. Teruvan Saranai. Yeah. And before conclude, I think shall I mention about tomorrow morning's
Yes.
Dhamma session, Bhante? Yeah, tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, we are having a Sinhala Dhamma talk, and it will be delivered by Most Venerable Kote Santindriya Nayaka Thero, and it is sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Sarat and Devika Jayasinghe, also the Friends of Dhamma Center. And they also, they wish to bless Bhante on his birthday. And please join if you have the time tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And that's all I have got to say. And Bhante, yes, over to you. Or
No, that's it. And just a reminder to everyone who doesn't receive emails from the Dhamma Center, that we are having a retreat, a full day retreat on the 26th of May. That is Wednesday, on the day on Vesak Day itself, from 8 a.m. to 9:15 p.m. So all the details are available online on our website if you haven't received the news already. So thank you very much, Anuma. Thank you, everyone else. I hope the Dhamma sharing was valuable, and that it created some sort of movement in you to sort of invoke deeper realizations and effort into the Dhamma. Right?
yes, Bhante.
I will see you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
And
you, Bhante.
have a wonderful rest of the night.
Teruvan Saranai. Good night.
Teruvan Saranai Bhante. Teruvan Saranai.